On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
George C. Scott, one of America's most uncompromising actors, passed away on September 22, 1999, at the age of 71. His death was attributed to a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm, a sudden and natural condition that underscores how mortality can strike swiftly, even for figures who seemed larger than life. Known for his intensity and aversion to Hollywood's trappings, Scott had long lived outside the glitz of celebrity culture, and his passing reflected the quiet dignity with which he often approached his craft. His death came at a moment when Hollywood was transitioning into a new millennium dominated by blockbuster franchises and digital storytelling, leaving behind the raw, character-driven performances that Scott epitomized. His most iconic role, General George S. Patton in Patton, 1970, had already immortalized him as a symbol of both military brilliance and human contradiction. Scott's refusal to accept the Academy Award for that performance, famously declaring that he did not compete against other actors, mirrored his disdain for superficial recognition and highlighted his era's tension between artistic integrity and commercial acclaim. The immediate consequences of his passing were tributes that celebrated his rare authenticity. Colleagues and critics remembered him not as a conventional star, but as an actor who embodied the full weight of his characters. His death also reinforced the fragility of a generation of performers who had shaped mid-20th century cinema with unflinching honesty. While he did not inspire sweeping societal shifts the way political or cultural icons might, his passing amplified his legend as a maverick who challenged the industry's norms. Scott's legacy reveals much about how we confront mortality and memory. He sought to be remembered not through accolades but through the truth of his performances. Today, he is immortalized through the roles that continue to resonate, from Patton to Dr. Strangelove. In a culture increasingly shaped by speed and spectacle, his artistry reminds us of the enduring power of depth and character. His death illustrates how memory elevates those who resist conformity. By commemorating Scott through film retrospectives, critical analysis, and continued appreciation of his work, we preserve not only the man, but also the values he championed: honesty, independence, and a commitment to craft above fame. In this way, mortality gives way to timelessness, and Scott remains a touchstone for artistic integrity. Dorothy Lamour, the glamorous star of Hollywood's golden age, died on September 22, 1996, at the age of 81. Her death, attributed to a heart attack at her home in North Hollywood, was a natural passing that reflected the quiet retreat many stars of her generation sought after decades in the public eye. Unlike the turbulent or tragic endings of some of her contemporaries, Lamour's death was peaceful, symbolizing the fading of a cinematic era defined by musicals, adventure comedies, and the optimism of mid-20th century America. Lamour rose to fame in the 1930s as the Sarong Queen, a title earned from her role in The Hurricane, 1937. Later, she became beloved for her appearances alongside Bing Crosby and Bob Hope in the Road to comedy series, which defined a lighter, escapist style of entertainment during World War II and the years that followed. Her death came at a time when Hollywood was steeped in blockbuster-driven storytelling, far removed from the breezy, lighthearted spectacles that had once made her a household name. In this way, her passing highlighted the cultural shift from the studio system's tightly curated star images to an era dominated by commercial franchises and celebrity individualism. The immediate consequences of Lamour's death were heartfelt tributes from fans and colleagues who remembered her as not just a glamorous star, but also a wartime symbol of American resilience. During World War II, she toured extensively to entertain troops and sell war bonds, raising millions for the Allied cause. Her passing reminded many of the unique role Hollywood stars played in bolstering national morale during times of crisis, a form of cultural power that transcended film alone. Her legend, though quieter than that of some contemporaries, was amplified in death by retrospectives that reintroduced audiences to the charm of the Road to series and her contributions to Hollywood's wartime efforts. Unlike some stars who faded into obscurity, Lamour retained her dignity, leaving behind an image of loyalty to her craft, her country, and her audience. Her death reveals how memory softens the sharp edges of fame and how society immortalizes figures like Lamour not only for their artistry, but also for the values they embodied: patriotism, escapism, and joy in times of uncertainty. Through film revivals, nostalgia-driven retrospectives, and the enduring appeal of classic Hollywood, Dorothy Lamour continues to live on as a reminder of cinema's power to uplift. Eddie Fisher, one of the most popular American singers of the 1950s, died on September 22, 2010, at the age of 82. His death was attributed to complications following hip surgery, making it a natural though medically complicated end to a life lived in the spotlight. Fisher's passing reflected the inevitable decline of mid-century idols, whose fame had once seemed untouchable, but whose personal struggles revealed the fragility behind stardom. Fisher first rose to fame with his smooth tenor voice, recording hits like "Oh My Papa" and "Anytime." His music defined post-war romanticism, offering audiences an emotional balm during a period of prosperity tempered by the anxieties of the Cold War. Yet his personal life became as notorious as his career, particularly after his scandalous divorce from actress Debbie Reynolds and subsequent marriage to Elizabeth Taylor. This public drama made Fisher one of the earliest examples of how celebrity culture could pivot from admiration to sensationalism. The immediate consequences of his death were quiet compared to the frenzy of his prime. Tributes noted his once enormous popularity. He had sold millions of records and hosted his own television show, while also acknowledging how his career was eclipsed by personal controversies and changing musical tastes. By the 1960s, as rock and roll reshaped American culture, Fisher's crooner style seemed outdated, and his personal scandals overshadowed his talent. In this way, his passing underscored the fleeting nature of fame and the harsh reality of how quickly cultural icons can be displaced. Still, his death amplified his legend in a subtler way. Obituaries and retrospectives painted a picture of both triumph and tragedy, reminding audiences of the dazzling heights he achieved as well as the pitfalls of a life lived under public scrutiny. Fisher's story continues to resonate as a cautionary tale about the cost of celebrity long before today's era of non-stop media coverage. Ultimately, Fisher's death highlights humanity's complex relationship with mortality and memory. We tend to immortalize figures like him not solely for their artistry, but for the narratives, both glamorous and messy, that mirror our own struggles with love, ambition, and downfall. Through his recordings, biographies, and the enduring fame of his family, including daughter Carrie Fisher, Eddie Fisher remains woven into cultural memory, a reminder of how art and personal history intertwine to shape legacy. Gordon Jump, best remembered for his role as the bumbling yet lovable radio station manager Arthur Carlson on the sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati, died on September 22, 2003, at the age of 71. His passing was due to pulmonary fibrosis, a progressive and ultimately fatal lung disease. This natural cause of death reflected the quiet, almost unassuming manner in which Jump had carried much of his career, dedicated to his craft but never seeking the kind of sensational spotlight that defined some of his contemporaries. Jump's career flourished during the late 1970s and 1980s, an era when television sitcoms began addressing more complex and realistic themes while still delivering comedy. WKRP in Cincinnati offered sharp satire of the radio and music industries, and Jump's Mr. Carlson, with his clueless warmth, became a cultural touchstone. His ability to embody characters who were both humorous and deeply human reflected television's growing embrace of relatability over glamour. The immediate consequence of his passing was a wave of affectionate tributes from colleagues and fans who recognized not only his comic timing, but also his versatility. Beyond WKRP, Jump took on memorable roles in shows like Different Strokes, where he played a bicycle shop owner in one of the most controversial, very special episodes, and later as the Maytag repairman, a role that cemented him in advertising history. His death did not cause a cultural upheaval, but it did bring a renewed appreciation of how character actors shape popular culture in ways that often outlast flashier stars. In death, Jump's legacy was amplified through retrospectives that highlighted his consistency, warmth, and courage in taking on socially meaningful roles, even when uncomfortable. He represented the everyman in television, a reminder that fame need not be scandalous or explosive to matter. His death reinforced how audiences often feel the deepest attachment to characters who reflect their own ordinary struggles and joys. Jump's passing reveals humanity's enduring need to honor those who, through art, bring familiarity and comfort to daily life. Mortality reminds us that even seemingly small contributions, like a sitcom character or a commercial persona, can echo across generations. We immortalize figures like Jump through reruns, nostalgic celebration, and the cultural memory of the roles they brought to life. In doing so, we affirm that art is not only about spectacle, but also about the enduring power of connection, laughter, and recognition of ourselves in others. Joseph Laurinaitis, better known by his ring name Road Warrior Animal, was a professional wrestling icon whose passing on September 22, 2020, at the age of 60, marked the end of an era. He died of natural causes related to cardiovascular disease while visiting Missouri, just days after celebrating his wedding anniversary. His death was sudden yet emblematic of the health struggles faced by many athletes in physically punishing industries like professional wrestling. Animal, along with his tag team partner Hawk, Michael Hegstrand, formed the Road Warriors, also known as the Legion of Doom, one of the most dominant tag teams in wrestling history. Rising to fame during the 1980s, their painted faces, spiked shoulder pads, and brute force embodied the over-the-top theatricality of the wrestling boom era. Their style reflected cultural values of the time, larger-than-life characters, hyper-masculine imagery, and the blending of sport with spectacle. The duo became symbols of dominance and intimidation, often steamrolling opponents in a way that thrilled fans and helped elevate tag team wrestling to unprecedented popularity. The immediate aftermath of Animal's death was felt deeply across the wrestling world. Fans, peers, and promotions like WWE and AEW paid tribute, recognizing him not only as a performer, but also as a pioneer who helped shape wrestling's global appeal. His passing following Hawk's death in 2003 cemented their team's legacy as one of the most celebrated in wrestling history. Together, their story reflected both the glory and the hardships of a business notorious for physical tolls and premature losses. Animal's death amplified the legend of the Road Warriors, solidifying them as cultural icons beyond wrestling. His career illustrated both the triumphs of entertainment-driven athletics and the risks tied to a life spent on the road. Fans revisited old matches, documentaries, and highlight reels, ensuring that his larger-than-life persona would remain etched in wrestling's mythology. Ultimately, Animal's passing underscores humanity's fascination with warriors, those who embody strength, resilience, and spectacle. Mortality strips away the paint and the theatrics, reminding us of the human being beneath the armor. Yet through video archives, fan tributes, and Hall of Fame honors, figures like Road Warrior Animal achieve a form of immortality. We immortalize such performers not only because of their victories in the ring, but because they represented the enduring drama of struggle, survival, and triumph. Values as old as humanity itself. Edward Albert, son of Golden Age actress Margot and actor Eddie Albert, was an accomplished actor in his own right, remembered for his charm, versatility, and quiet dedication to both the screen and humanitarian causes. His death on September 22, 2006, at the age of 55, came after a battle with lung cancer. His passing at a relatively young age reflected the persistent threat of cancer in modern society, a disease that, despite scientific advances, continues to claim lives across generations. In Albert's case, it also underscored the health challenges faced by performers whose demanding schedules and stressful careers often left little room for self-care. Albert rose to prominence in the 1970s, winning a Golden Globe for Butterflies Are Free, 1972, where he portrayed a blind man seeking independence. His performance resonated with an era embracing themes of personal liberation and social change, mirroring the shifting cultural values of the time. Beyond his acting career, Albert was known for his activism, particularly in environmental causes, following in the footsteps of his father, who was also an outspoken conservationist. The immediate consequence of Albert's death was felt most keenly within Hollywood and among his devoted fan base. For many, it marked not only the loss of a talented actor, but also the fading of a family legacy deeply tied to both old Hollywood and socially conscious artistry. His decision to step away from major roles in order to care for his ailing father before his own illness highlighted values of loyalty and family responsibility, virtues admired but often challenged in modern life's fast pace. Albert's death did not dramatically shift cultural history, but it did amplify his legacy in subtler ways. Fans and critics revisited his most poignant roles, recognizing how his work captured the spirit of an evolving America. His humanitarian and environmental efforts also took on renewed significance, reinforcing the idea that public figures can wield their platform for causes beyond entertainment. In reflecting on Albert's passing, we are reminded that mortality binds even those touched by stardom. His life illustrates how memory is preserved not only through enduring film performances, but also through personal values carried forward by admirers. Humanity immortalizes figures like Edward Albert in art, cinema, and commemoration, because they remind us that the measure of a legacy lies not only in fame, but in the compassion and ideals left behind. Yogi Berra, one of baseball's most beloved and enduring figures, passed away on September 22, 2015, at the age of 90 from natural causes. His long life and peaceful passing stood in contrast to the relentless, competitive energy he displayed during his career. Berra's death reflected the values of his era, a generation that had endured war, embraced teamwork, and helped shape America's post-war identity through sports and culture. As a World War II veteran who later became a baseball legend, Berra embodied resilience and humility, qualities that resonated across decades. The immediate consequence of his passing was an outpouring of grief and celebration across the sports world and beyond. Tributes flowed from fans, fellow athletes, presidents, and cultural icons. Major League Baseball held moments of silence, and the New York Yankees honored him with ceremonies that underscored his towering presence in their history. His death amplified his legend, reminding the public not only of his 10 World Series championships and 3 MVP awards, but also of his charm as a cultural figure whose famous yogi-isms blended humor with wisdom. Bera's passing also prompted a re-evaluation of his place in history. While he had long been cherished by fans, his contributions as both a player and cultural icon took on renewed weight. His life bridged eras, from the working-class immigrant neighborhoods of St. Louis to the pinnacles of Yankee Stadium, from wartime service at D-Day to the post-war boom that made baseball America's pastime. His story reflected the American dream, one rooted in hard work, community, and perseverance. Though Bera's death did not shift the course of global history, it strengthened his mythos. For younger generations, his legacy became less about specific batting averages or statistics and more about the timeless values he represented: humor, perseverance, and humanity. His oft-quoted lines, such as "It ain't over till it's over," continue to transcend baseball, serving as everyday philosophy. Bera's passing reminds us that humanity immortalizes figures like him through storytelling, commemoration, and art. Statues, museum exhibits, and even the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center ensure that his contributions are celebrated not just as athletic feats, but as cultural touchstones. His life and death illustrate how mortality transforms a beloved figure into a symbol, one who continues to guide memory, laughter, and inspiration long after the final inning. Marion Davies, the glamorous actress of Hollywood's golden age, passed away on September 22, 1961, at the age of 64 from cancer. Her death was natural, yet deeply symbolic of the challenges faced by women in early Hollywood, where private struggles were often overshadowed by public image. Davies had lived much of her life under the shadow of media magnate William Randolph Hearst, whose influence shaped both her career and the way the public perceived her. In many ways, her death marked the end of an era that fused celebrity, power, and scandal into the mythology of American cinema. The immediate consequence of her passing was a renewed curiosity about her life and career. Though she had retired from acting in the late 1930s, her connection to Hearst and the widespread belief that she inspired the character of Susan Alexander in Orson Welles' Citizen Kane ensured that her name remained inextricably tied to Hollywood history. Tributes at the time emphasized her charm, generosity, and talent, yet they also reflected the contradictions of her career. She was admired, but often more as a figure of wealth and romance than as an actress in her own right. Her death amplified the legend surrounding her and Hearst, casting their decades-long relationship in a nostalgic light. By the 1960s, the Hollywood of Davies' heyday had already faded, replaced by a new era of filmmaking. Her passing thus symbolized the final curtain on the Hearst-Davies empire of extravagance, epitomized by San Simeon, the Hearst Castle, where she had once hosted the biggest stars of the day. For historians and critics, her death provided an opportunity to reconsider her legacy, not as a caricature of Hearst's influence, but as a skilled comedian and humanitarian who quietly funded charities and hospitals throughout her life. What Davies' death reveals about humanity's relationship with mortality is the way memory often blurs fact and myth. While some contemporaries remembered her as the embodiment of Hollywood glamour, others saw her as a woman confined by the power structures of her time. Yet through retrospectives, biographies, and restorations of her films, she has been gradually reclaimed as a performer of wit and warmth. Davies lives on in more than the shadow of Hearst's empire. She is immortalized through the art she left behind, the enduring intrigue of Citizen Kane, and the cultural memory of Hollywood's Gilded Age. Her passing reminds us that figures once defined by circumstance can, through remembrance, be seen anew as individuals of lasting significance.